Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third episode of Brilliancies by Mikhail. And today we are going to analyze a game played in 1964, which Tal played in the simultaneous exhibition against John Ripley. And this game is, you know, as I think I previously told you in the previous video, this game is one of the best simul games Tal's ever played. And because John was a decent player, he was a club player at that point of time, and he had won some tournaments. And particularly in this game, you see how Tal calculates precisely. So, just coming to the position quickly, Tal's playing with the white pieces, and Tal has a nice attacking position here with the pawn on g6, bishop on e6, and the pawn on d5. So, John has played knight b6 with the threat of knight to c4, and he's trying to fork the bishop and the queen, and trying to exchange of the bishop on e3 for the knight on b6 so that he can improve his position slightly. It's still winning for Tal, but it's very important the way Tal does it. So, the first move Tal plays here is f captures 5. And well, what is Tal trying to achieve here? After f captures on e5, Tal is basically asking black to make a choice. That okay, you play knight b6 with the idea of knight c4 and forking the queen and the bishop. But what do you hear about the e5 pawn? So if d captures on e5, then simply pawn to d6, and you will have a nice little outpass passer. The bishop on e6 controls a lot of squares, and the king is slightly feeling uncomfortable on the e8 square. So yeah, this is why you see this position. At first you see that black's rooks are disconnected, the king is stuck in the center, and this is the exact compensation Tal is banking upon. So f captures on e5 by Mikhail Tal, and what do? If d captures pawn to d6, as we initially saw, if bishop captures on e5, then that is not going to help because simply rook captures on f6, f8 with a check. King captures rook to f1 with a check. Now, if you move the king, simply rook f7 wins the game because now it's too much of a domination. And of course, there are also sorts of threat, right? Bishop at 6, queen f2, everything is simply winning for Tal. So you can't allow that. And if you go bishop to f6 trying to block the rook, then simply comes bishop captures on h6. And this is it. I mean, you can't do anything better than that. The threat is bishop back to g5 or rook f6 first. If you play something like queen e7, then simply bishop g5, and well, I don't find anything much better you can do here. The threat is bishop captures, pawn captures, queen h6 check, and it will be the game for Mikhail Tal. You can try knight d7, just to defend position as long as possible, but simply bishop captures, knight captures, it's not going to help too long for you. There is queen h2, there is rook h1, there is everything is going to just enter the position. I think even here bishop captures on d7 is also very good. Queen captures is takes, and after king g8, there is queen h2, and well, this move is just amazing. Attacking the d6 pawn twice. There are also threats of rook f7, and for rook f7, if you try to stop with rook f8, just rook captures, pawn, king captures, queen to h8 with a check, king e7, queen g7. You trade off the queens and simply push the pawn, and you're going to get a new queen onto the board. So, well, this is what Tal had in his mind, so you can't really go into this line. So, what actually John played? John says, okay, well, you have taken my pawn, so let me go with my plan, knight to c4. John proceeds with his plan with capturing the queen, and now, yeah, this is again a very important critical point in this game where I will ask you guys to pause the video. If for those who don't know this game, you should really pause and try to figure out what Tal played. I think seeing the previous episodes, seeing the style of Mikhail Tal, maybe you guys will be you can just guess the move that Tal played, because Tal doesn't like to play normally. He always likes to play tactically. So for those who want to just enjoy it, Tal actually sacrifices his queen. Tal plays pawn on f6. And why so? Because if you see Tal's playing style, Tal doesn't like passive play. Okay, so if he tries to move his queen, simply knight e5, and black is doing fine. The pawn on e5 was a much needed pawn. So Tal says, well, uh, I'm going to sacrifice my queen. Pawn captures on f6. And what can black do? Black doesn't have a lot of choices here. If you just recapture the pawn anyway, then you have just lost a piece. So there's no use of it. So John does go into this line. Knight captures on d2 with a check. You have bishop captures on d2. And now, again, John is in a deep trouble. Well, how do you capture this pawn? There are two different ways to capture the f6 pawn, but none of them actually work. So, for example, if rook captures on f6, then simply rook captures on f6, pawn captures, and bishop captures on f6, and there is no defense against pawn to g7 and pawn to g8. Uh, you can try king e7, but simply pawn g7, and you are going to get this b8 rook for the g7 pawn, after which Tal will have a bishop pair and a rook against a queen, which is going to be just too much of a material, because if you know, the bishop pair itself is a lot for the queen, and the bishop pair along with the rook on d1 is going to be just too much for Tal. So this is what happens if rook captures on f6 is played, and if g captures on f6, then doesn't make a lot of difference. Bishop captures on h6, not threatening bishop f8, but threatening g7, and there is no better way to stop it. If king e7, simply bishop captures, rook captures, pawn g7, and again the rook has to stay in the last rank to guard against this pawn. Let's say rook e8, you just push it to queen. Takes. Now again, you have two rooks and a bishop against a queen, and Tal's clearly winning in this position. So you can't do this either. So again, what should John play here? Knight captures on d2 check, rook bishop captures, and John actually doesn't take the pawn. So as we discussed, there are two options of taking the pawn. John plays rook to b7. He says, okay, well, I'm trying to add one more defender to the queen here. Just a minute, yeah, to the not to the queen, to the g7 pawn here. But what do you do here? Again, Tal had choices. f7 check does win the game, but Tal absolutely finds the best move possible. So again, a chance to pause the video, and for those who know it, it's bishop captures on h6. So Tal sacrifices the queen, and till here, when I was analyzing the game, I felt that two bishops are enough for this queen, so Tal is winning the game anyhow. But Tal sacrifices the bishop again, and after g captures, which was played in the game, actually Tal has only a bishop for a queen. So if you see, the compensation is it's very what you can say, very less amount of compensation. But because Tal has such powerful pawns on the sixth rank, Tal is going to win the game. So Tal simply pushes g7, and John can very well resign here. You don't have anything to do. Uh, you can go into queen captures on g7, pawn captures, rook captures on g7, then rook f8, king f8, and yeah, you get this position where you're down a piece, and there is no point playing against a grandmaster of more than 2500 rated player in this particular position. So John, of course, doesn't like this. John says, well, okay, let me allow Tal to make a brilliancy. So he plays queen c4, trying to make his queen more active. Maybe having some plans of attacking the rook on f1, but there's not much that black can do here. So Tal continues with his brilliancies. Pawn captures on f8, queens with a check, king captures, and now comes rook g1. So Tal threats rook g8 checkmate. And how do you defend? I mean, the pawn guards e7 and g7, the bishop guards f7 and d7, so king e8 doesn't really work. So John plays the only possible move, rook to f7, and now Tal plays rook to g4. And Tal says, well, now I'm not only attacking the queen, but I'm also making a rook left so that I can put the other rook on g1 and threat a nice checkmate on g8. And it was in this position that John actually resigned the game, because there's nothing that he can do. He cannot take on f6 because the queen is under attack, and if he plays something like queen e2, trying to attack the rook on d1, then simply rook to g1, rook d to g1, and threatening a checkmate. You have to take the pawn. Now comes rook g8 check, king e7, and rook 1 to g7 check. The king is completely blocked with the bishop. Rook f7 only move. Now the rook guards 8th rank, the other rook takes the rook, and this is a nice little checkmate in the middle of the board for Mikhail. So yeah, here in this position at queen c4, John actually resigned the game because he realized that there is no option but to allow rook g1 and rook g8 checkmate, and well, there's nothing much that you can do here. So again, a very fierce attacking game from Mikhail, you know, not giving a single chance to his opponent. And this calculation of f captures on e5, allowing knight c4, and then capturing the bishop, sacrificing the queen, was the best part of this entire game. And that makes this game so special. And that also is a good lesson for any player to learn, that the amount of pieces doesn't matter. The amount of active pieces and active pawns do matter in any position, in any middle game also. So Tal just sacrifices queen after pawn captures, knight c4, pawn captures on f6, knight captures g2, bishop captures g2. Uh, Tal is down whole queen for the two bishops, but not only does he have two bishops, but he also has two pawns that are poisonous. So these two pawns cannot be taken. As we discussed, both of these things fail, and this bishop is now going to sacrifice itself on h6 as he did in the game, and he's just going to keep the king in the center and burst upon the position. So, I treat this as a perfect definition, or what you can say, learning video for what do you mean by compensation in chess. Okay, because many beginner players, many intermediate players have observed that they sacrifice pieces. They don't really understand if the position is winning or not, and so they tend to fear to sacrifice pieces. But you have to actually analyze the position in such aspect that what is the piece that is finally going to win me the game. So Tal has these two pawns that are going to win him the game finally. And because of these two pawns, all these passive pieces are also rendered, they are useless in this position. They cannot defend black from getting checkmated. So yeah, that was the game. That was a quick review of this game. This was a simultaneous exhibition game. So um, I just covered it very quickly in the first few episodes, because the rest of the games that we are going to analyze are just Tal with some of the grandmasters and few brilliances of Mikhail Tal at world championship level also. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, if you have not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe.